I think the problem that we have is we have created a hierarchical roll call of success, which started with JEE ranks, then went to CAT percentiles, and then went to CTCs. And at some point in time, we have to stop.
Over the years, I've seen that successful students, in terms of perhaps being in a good place in their careers, or having become experts in a particular area, or doing well, or even becoming a CEO, are not always the ones who were very academically inclined in the institute, or who were very focused or very clear about where they wanted to go. So I think that success is something that can happen to everyone, thank God.
You don't have to do an MBA, but if you're looking to pursue a certain set of careers and a certain set of domains, that is one of the strongest options available to you.
So we are sitting right now at BITSoM. We came in here last year when this B school was fairly in this nascent stage. It was in the first year. Now we have a lot of more students that we can talk about. And to talk about this institute, to talk about MBA in general, to talk about future leaders and how they can be prepared, I have two very seasoned professionals sitting right next to me. Dr. Leena Chatterjee has taught at IIM Calcutta for more years than I have lived in this particular planet. And Dr. Banerjee has also taught at SPJIMR, and he has been guest lecturer at many institutes, universities across the world. And he's the dean of this particular institute. Carrying forward our conversation, Dr. Banerjee, I would like to say that, it sort of has become ritual that every year I meet you and I get a sense of what the world looks like, what is the business world thinking, and how you are preparing leaders for that world. What exactly has changed in your opinion in this 1 year, if we talk about the general sense of MBA, the general sense of the essence of business schools for the matter?
I think if you look at business schools in general, the value of the classroom and the value of social interaction is something that people are realizing all over again.
Right.
Second is, I think the nature of work itself is changing. Also, in the pandemic, I think many people got a chance to think about what matters to them. You've heard about the Great Resignation, right? So I think one of the things is that people will look for more meaning in jobs. People will look for more flexibility in jobs. Issues like balance will become more important. This is one side. The other flip side of the job market is that I don't think there is a company on this planet that can guarantee you lifelong employment.
Right.
Right? So people are likely to have multiple careers in a lifetime. So the need to be self-aware, the need to know your strengths, and the need to continually develop multiple interests, because you cannot guarantee that the job or the role that you have today is going to be itself around 5 years down the line.
Right.
So self-awareness, learnability, the ability to pivot, the ability to solve a different range of problems. Where we started off, I think MBA education started off in a world where you had companies making stable output.
Right.
And they were still scaling up this stable output. And hence what you needed was managers who were managing largely predictable environments. You are now looking for managers who can manage unstructured or semi-structured problems. Nature of thinking is important. The ability to reskill is important. The ability to relearn. And in all this, you are in a world of social media where the frequency of comparison is higher. Insecurity is higher. Issues of mental health are far more frequent than before. So today, if I were to look at the future of MBAs and preparing leaders, I would say self-awareness and personalization of learning to the individual student
Right.
has become much, much more important than ever before.
This whole thing of the psychological contract between an employer and employee changing has been happening.
Right.
You remember when I don't know if you were born, but there was this time when downsizing started, and when this whole thing of lifetime employment became something that was being thrown out by companies, creating a lot of turmoil. And then companies started getting into more of a relationship or a employability contract.
Right.
That while you're here with us, you will learn, or you will, enhance your learnability. And I think today the contract is becoming even more temporary. Therefore, organizations are being forced to look at and understand new ways of engaging with their employees.
Right. I'm going to take this opportunity for you guys to reflect a little bit on your teacher-student relationship. Tell me a little bit about that, Dr. Banerjee. When you actually studied under, Dr. Chatterjee, did you ever think that you'll be a dean of an institute where you'll actually tell her that, why don't you come and teach her?
No, I don't think so. I think, look, I was from a teaching family. And when I had actually left academia, I had decided, left IIM Cal, I think I did not want to go back to academia. For me, I got back into teaching by accident, but when I got back into teaching, it was the most natural thing in the world for me to do. But I think our relationship, it's still a teacher-student relationship at some level. It's a friend and mentor relationship at some level. It's a wonderful relationship. And I think the reason it works is because there is a set of values that are core. If I go back to my IIM Cal thing, why do faculty, you talk to any batch at IIM Calcutta, they will remember a Dr. Leena Chatterjee. And I think one of the reasons is that at that time, she was approachable. She was one of the few faculty you could easily go and talk to outside the classroom. Now, I think that is something we believe in both very strongly. And if you look at the kind of institution that we are trying to build together, it is a lot about saying that if the student can talk freely to the dean or to the senior faculty, then what you're really doing is create a culture.
Right.
And without that approachability, self-awareness cannot be built in a cohort of students. Because the major conversations that build self-awareness in a student happen by processing something in the class, outside the classroom, and having a conversation. I think she was the pioneer of this whole thing, that I think she was doing mental health before mental health became an issue. So
Ranjan and I share a very strong common belief in student centricity, in openness, in not just being approachable, but also being vulnerable. Because, students don't just learn from, us being open to them. They watch us. And if we
Right.
are willing to be vulnerable, if we are willing to learn, if we are willing to show that we are works in progress, it's easier for them to understand that as well.
Dr. Banerjee, I want to come back to you. Why I started this conversation with faculties is because, you're stressing on the global faculties that you're trying to build in. And also of the fact that, we are living in an age where courses are available everywhere. Every person, every individual who is a social media influencer is building a course and is teaching something in return to the people who are subscribing to them, right? They're getting knowledge, but there's no way to quantify how much of that knowledge is solid knowledge that can build your profile, right? How important do you think then in a B school of any sort, in any part of the country or the world, having great faculties matter? How much emphasis do you put in that? And what work has gone into it?
yes, so I think your question is very interesting. We have made quite a big point about saying we are getting the best teachers in the world to teach at our institute. Now, what do I think sets the best teachers apart? What sets the best teachers apart is not knowledge, is not exposure. Those are needed. They have an awareness of their subject, they have practiced their subject and interacted with managers in different countries and different contexts, so they can provide global perspectives. But the best teachers are very good at creating a learning environment. So if you were looking at content and knowledge, our students are also good enough to get knowledge from multiple sources. But if you're looking at application of knowledge in context, it happens through discussion, and it happens through taking knowledge and teaching students to think for themselves in the classroom.
Right.
So the best teachers have the knowledge themselves, but they don't share it with you. They lead you there through questioning. And it is that pedagogy. So one is the importance of an environment, the importance of the teacher asking questions more than answering them, and sometimes knowing the answer but having the maturity to continue asking questions, because you are creating the ability in students, number one, to ask the right questions, and number two, to find their own answers. So I think that's what the best teachers do. And if you go into our classrooms, you'll see a variety of methodologies, but I have never seen, in all the institutes I have touched, this quality of consistent high teaching feedback. You know, when I say global faculty, what does it mean? Business is increasingly global. Are you able to see the connections between business and society, between country and country, between what is happening inside your business and the importance of the global environment, even on business in India? So it is the ability to see these connections. And for these connections to be seen, the faculty must be able to see the connections and be able to bring the examples to the classroom, which will enable the student to see the connections.
How do you tackle this, Dr. Chatterjee, when we say that, measurable outcomes? It's something that's very subjective. It's something where, some person's strength, maybe some person's weakness. How do you make sure that you assess all this better in a class of 50, 60, 100 people? And how do you make sure that you give them enough support or the kind of guidance that is needed for them to become, better leaders?
So the advantage of an institute like this, where we have, say, 138 students or 132 or a smaller number of students, is that it becomes easier to give this personalized attention. At IIM Calcutta, it was only based on students who perhaps either approached me or who took a second year course in which I did this sort of in-depth work with them, because it requires a lot of interaction and working with the students. But here I actually do a personal development plan for every student. So I do get them to do psychometric tests. I get them to get feedback about themselves. I ask them to think a little bit about their values, their priorities in life, where they want to go, maybe in the short run, because many of them don't know where they want to go, to think a little bit about it. What are the options? Some of them are clear. What could be a long-term goal? What do they want in life? To think about some of these things, just to give them that space. And then to think of what they need to do to get where they want to go. Because otherwise it's like luck by chance. Suddenly, life happens to you rather than you making it happen.
Correct.
Ultimately, I think one of the kind of outcomes of this whole process is that I hope that it will become a habit.
Right.
So that they become learners for life, that they can take stock at different points of their lives and say, okay, where am I right now? Where do I want to go? How do I get there? Rather than allowing things like FOMO or peer pressure or whatever to decide where they are. Because if you are self-aware, then you will be a little more conscious of the decisions you take during placement.
Absolutely.
Because you know that, okay, this is what I want, this is where what I don't like. So you will not get into decisions with very little information. I think that is what I'm trying to do to help break that trend that you have seen.
Absolutely.
That people just blindly get into.
Right.
I'll build on that.
Yeah, sure.
So to me, self-awareness, and I was thinking about this as you were speaking, we tend to think of self-awareness as an attribute. I'm self-aware or I'm not. I think self-awareness is also a skill and a process.
Right.
So as an example, I can speak about myself. I became the head of an academic institute at the age of 49. The average age of my faculty was significantly higher than my age at that point in time. I had not done that job before. What am I saying? I'm basically saying you are not necessarily prepared or ready for the biggest jobs in your life. But if you have been through processes where you have encountered challenge, reflected, learned what your strengths are and know which ones you can apply, you can also figure out what you need to do.
Right.
So for leaders, self-awareness is an ongoing process. The fact that you're self-aware today does not mean that you cannot become complacent tomorrow. So your process of continually taking feedback, assessing yourself and being willing to change and adapt is something that they need to learn here.
Right. Dr. Banerjee, interestingly, you were mentioning that, we measure everything in numbers, right? When we talk about figures, when we talk about how successful a particular B school is, it's the figures that define it in India. Unfortunately, that's the truth, right? But the other unfortunate truth is it's these very numbers through which these students actually get into B schools, right? We always see how their scores are in CAT, or GMATs or any other entrance exams that they are writing. Is it a fair practice?
It is the current practice. The aptitude tests that we use to bring students in, they generally tend to measure, basically when you look at academic record of a student and aptitude tests, you are able to measure two things. You are able to measure conscientiousness. You are able to measure general intelligence, which often tends to be more towards quantitative intelligence and language intelligence, right? Typically, you do not measure the people intelligence. So that's one part. The second part so I'm not talking about fair practice, I'm saying this is the current practice.
Yeah.
So what do you need to improve? And I think a large part of this is you need to improve the importance you give to the profile and life experiences of the student in an interview process. One thing I think we've done successfully, there are other institutes who are doing it well, but we think we've done it very well, is that many institutes, when they interview people, they interview you again around those same, they will ask you math questions or calculus questions. So often I am looking at interviewing as a rejection process rather than a selection process.
Right.
While here what we are saying is we want to see your best self. So we will find out your strengths, and that strength may be that you have achieved a certain level of proficiency in playing the guitar. I want to understand your process, because what I am looking for isn't things you are passionate about. I think we need to expand the lens in which we assess managerial potential. A global expert in leadership, in innovation,
Right.
who is a professor in the US, had a GMAT score of 450. And there was an institution in the US which had the maturity to look beyond the GMAT score. How many institutions in India can do that? So I'm not saying even we are there, but at least we are looking for things over and above.
Now let's talk a little bit about the numbers, Dr. Banerjee, because as much as we want, we can't avoid it because people want to know about it, and we need to give them a context as to what you are building here right now. What sort of companies have you attracted? What sort of offers have students gotten this year? Are you happy with the foundation batch and the performance that they have had in this last year? And what are your goals? What are you eyeing in the future?
We are very happy with our founding batch. We are very happy. They have got pre-placement offers from some of the top. We're not mentioning names at this point in time, but you name the top consulting company that is there, you name the strategy company. So leading recruiters and top companies have given pre-placement offers. More importantly, we have written feedback from recruiters that your students were hungry and willing to learn.
Right.
And this is in a comparative set where the top institutes are there. So they have held their own and more in some of the top companies. And this has been seen in terms of long-term recruitment patterns. If I speak of summer internships as we speak, for an institute in its second year, we are saying Arthur D. Little, Bain, BCG and A.T. Kearney are all hiring for internships. You tell me which institute in the second year has achieved this? A Hindustan Unilever is hiring. An Aditya Birla Group is hiring.
Right.
So we are getting some of the top companies very, very early. So I think there's definite buzz. We are creating the right environment. We are giving the right inputs. We need to have the right attitude. So it's not only the environment, the students also have the work, the students also have to deliver. It takes time, but let's say the recipe is in place. Do the numbers guarantee that you're building the right institute? They don't. The numbers are ultimately hygiene. It is where your students feel about themselves. It is the way they react in crisis. Today, validation is that, look, these students have gone to London Business School. LBS entrepreneurs have given them their problems. And in 2 weeks, they've presented solutions, and the LBS entrepreneurs have been very, very happy. So, they've been validated in multiple contexts in terms of their quality. So right. I think it works at multiple levels.
In this particular panel where she's sitting with an experience of 37 years of teaching, you are here who have started your own business as well in the process. You have worked for a company as well in the earlier years, and then you have taught as well. How important does it become for teachers who are coming in with certain sense of experience and having teachers who have long academic experience? How important is it to blend these two together when we are talking about higher education?
What do the best academic faculty do? So typically the best academic faculty, their understanding of business comes from researching it. So they may not have practiced themselves, but they have learned from the experience of many, many practitioners. and they have gone in and figured out what works and what does not work. The second is, you will find that the best faculty make it a point to engage in executive education and consulting, and they are getting their reality check. So they come strong in theory, strong in pedagogy, and they understand practice through engaging with practitioners over a period of time. The other is the practitioner. Not all practitioners make good teachers. Not all CEOs make very great faculty. So when you bring in the practitioner comes in with expertise. But the practitioner has to be willing to read theory, to put it into a conceptual framework, because otherwise what the practitioner is doing is storytelling, and glamorous storytelling does not work beyond a point in teaching.
Absolutely.
Because the student needs generalizability across contexts. So a great teacher can be a practitioner who's willing to learn the theory, or a theoretician who's willing to learn the practice. But what is common is the deep desire to make a difference to the student. I'll let you in on one more thing. Through the course of the last 8 years, I've had many CEOs coming to me saying, I want to teach.
Right.
I always have a question, why do you want to teach? And there are people who say, I will learn a lot from the students and it will improve my understanding. And there will be people who say, I want to share what I have learned with students. The category which just says, I want to share what I have learned, rarely makes good teachers, because they don't have the humility that is required to succeed consistently in teaching.
Dr. Banerjee, I'll come next to a very important factor that we were also discussing some time back about jobs, about the careers that you can make after you are done with your B school, right? And it's very important for students because they have financial liabilities, they have taken education loans, and most of these courses in India are pretty expensive, to say the least, right? How do they make sure that the investment that they're making, they're getting the best return out of it from that, right? And what are some of the sectors that you would say is definitely going to prosper where they should eye up?
I think that in India, whatever happens to the economy, top 5,000 graduates in the country still have a good market. The top 5,000 master's graduates in the country. So when you look at sectors today, if I were to tell you, I would say anything at the confluence of technology and business is going to grow. Whether it be some type of consulting roles, there is a new emerging, and it has become fashionable to call about product management.
Right.
It's technology product management which is growing. I think if you look at many of the conventional roles, whether it be finance or marketing, you will find that an integration of technology and so for instance, if you understand digital marketing, that's going to be a capability that is going to be increasingly valued. If you're looking at finance and technology, that's going to be a capability that is increasingly valued. So I would look at a student's strengths, and I would say your strength and the role match is what you need to look for. Also in the first 5 years, I would say you need to look at learning very, very strongly. Good campuses will get good companies with good roles, and you will get compensation. If I were to advise a student, I would say this. If you have to choose between 2 lakhs more and learning, I understand that there is a floor of compensation which you need. But between learning value and 2 lakhs more, please pick learning value, because this is still the stage in your career where you are building a resume and building capabilities. Right? So that would be my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is just understand that the careers which are hot today will not be hot 3 years down the line. So there were people, I know some of the more successful students I've had in the 90s, were people who joined FMCG firms, but they moved to media in 4 to 5 years in marketing and strategy roles. Now when they moved to media, they had to unlearn, they had to relearn, they had to take an intelligent risk. But are you learnable and confident enough to see these role shifts and understand your strengths? Are you watching the trends, knowing what is happening in the environment, aware of your strengths? Because the jobs that are growing will shift every 3 to 5 years. If a student today comes out with the ability to have a good conversation across a table, that skill is more valuable than ever.
I'll come to you, Chatterjee. We talk about successful students. We talk about people who have reached certain levels in their lives. You must have also have students who are not as good, probably, as the first benches, right? Or the people who are definitely going to succeed in their lives. How do you tackle that problem Do you see that as a problem? And what are your measures so that you can put them in sort of an equal footing and make them ready to attain the best for themselves?
So I think first of all we have to look at what you mean by success, or front benchers or whoever. I certainly have never looked at my students as toppers versus the rest, or benchers versus anyone. And I can assure you that over the years I've seen that successful students, in terms of perhaps being in a good place in their careers, or having become experts in a particular area, or doing well, or even becoming a CEO, are not always the ones who were very academically inclined in the institute, or who were very focused or very clear about where they wanted to go. So I think that success is something that can happen to everyone, thank God. And I think all of us need to be clear about what is it that we are looking for in a job, in our lives, and to pursue it.
Right.
So I have a student from a previous institute who worked for one of the top consulting companies, and then went off to start off a social enterprise where she's working with women in the villages to make pickles and things like that. And she's running this organization, and she's so happy.
Right.
Do I think she's successful? Very much so. She's doing things that she finds meaningful. She's trying to scale up. She's working at setting up her business, and I think she's doing well, as well as somebody else who's the CEO of some company.
Right.
So I think we need to redefine success.
I'd like to build on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great response. I think the problem that we have is we have created a hierarchical roll call of success, which started with JEE ranks, then went to CAT percentiles, and then went to CTCs. And at some point in time, we have to stop, because in that definition of success, somebody always has to be first. While the reality, the way one needs to look at student success is every student has some unique strengths.
Right.
Absolutely.
And if those unique strengths are taken to those fullest potential, every student has the power to make a positive difference to the world. To me, success is contribution. The problem with society is we have defined success as one of what I call the three drugs: money, power, fame. Right? And money, power, fame can be hierarchically ranked, and we are comfortable hierarchically ranking. We must give our students the confidence that they can find success on their own terms. And success and happiness and meaning must go hand in hand. And for that, it is what is it that you care about, that you are good at, through which you can make a difference to the world.
Right.
And if you have the courage to chase excellence and contribution over an extended period of time, you will be successful. So the elite schools are creating privileged students. They will work in large companies, they will earn a lot of money. But in India today, if the well-to-do and the elite are not improving the lot of the rest of the country, this country will never progress. Right? So I think that to me, success is contribution.
Final words from you, Dr. Banerjee, in the day and time that we are living in right now, where information is at our fingertips, we can access anything and everything in the world that's there. We can learn from the best possible people or resources. If I need to learn digital marketing, right? In such a scenario, in such a case, why is it that an MBA is important? What would you peg MBA as a degree to be? And why do I need to come to an institute like this?
I don't think you have to come to an MBA institute. I think if you are looking for a certain type of career in leadership, but an MBA is the closest we have to an education which is at the intersection of business and leadership. Ideally, I would go to, say, business, society and leadership. And a significant proportion of the employment opportunities will be at the intersection of business, society and leadership. So for the person who wants to do this, an MBA is a good option. Now the question you're asking, when all the knowledge is there, because if you look at learning, I think classroom learning is, and peer learning is a part. Self-learning is a large part of learning. But a lot of self-learning is about reflection, and it's about learning through conversation and interaction. So if you look at your biggest learning, it is learning through experience. The MBA helps you to curate a set of experiences and learn from them. It also gives you a language to look at the world. Is it the only way to get this? No, but probably it is the strongest way to get this that we have available today. So you don't have to do an MBA, but if you're looking to pursue a certain set of careers and a certain set of domains, that is one of the strongest options available to you. That's, I'd leave it at that.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Banerjee, Dr. Chatterjee, for your time. It was nice having this conversation with you. We definitely reflected on certain things that we have sort of not thought about or have put blinders on because of the kind of world that we live in and the kind of things that is taught to us or told to us to behave in certain ways. And I'm sure this is going to be of help to students who are watching this as well. If you have any particular question, do let us know in the comments below. We will make sure that we put those questions to Dr. Banerjee and Dr. Chatterjee so that they can answer them. If you want to know more about this particular B school and the achievements that it has achieved, there's a link in the description. You can go check that out, and do tell us how you thought this conversation was and if it helped you in return. Thank you once again. It was nice having you guys again on the platform, and I wish you all the very best for all the success to all your students in the coming years.
Thank you. We enjoyed the conversation.